Welcome to the Orange Hammer Podcast. My name is Corbett Storick. I've been a licensed general contractor for 8+ years, specializing in new construction, renovation, furniture building. I'm the son of an architect and an interior designer, and I've been surrounded in this industry since birth, watching all aspects from concept, design, build, punch list, and of course, all the problems that come up in between. In my time in Durham, North Carolina, I've noticed a significant gap in knowledge between homeowners who need work and the people who do the work. On this podcast, I hope to break down the process of homeownership from the perspective of both the homeowner and the contractor in an effort to help raise the knowledge of homeowners about their homes and the construction/renovation process. I hope you enjoy. If you're enjoying the Orange Hammer Podcast, or if you have a topic that you want covered, or have recently done a project, please contact the Orange Hammer Podcast. The Orange Hammer Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. Please like and subscribe, share on whatever platform you're enjoying your podcast on. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Orange Hammer. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by CRS Contracting LLC for all your construction and handyman needs, new buildings to renovations, furniture building, EV charger install, or even a TV mounted. You can call me, Corbett Storick. It'd be my pleasure to help you. You can find me on Instagram at CRS Contracting. WSDG, the Walter Storick Design Group, specialists in architectural and acoustical consulting. Check out WSDG.com. And Taylor Bragg, for all your artistic needs in all mediums. You can find her on Instagram at brag_about_art. That's brag, BRGG, with 2 G's. She's the fantastic artist behind the Orange Hammer logo, and she did my fantastic table painting of my podcasting table. All right, Dennis, how are you today?
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
The Builder Brigade.
That's it.
Yeah, so I know we've barely even chatted, and here we are on a podcast, but such is life. So I cannot even remember, so apologies, listeners, how I stumbled upon your content. But one of these days, just flicking through, it must have been Instagram, and a video caught my eye of 5 things you should ask your contractor to do before the sheetrock gets put up on the walls. And it was all 5 things I already do that I picked up or had figured out myself, but aren't the standard practice, because anywhere a corner can be cut, money can be saved by whoever's job it is at that time. And I was just, so taken aback that somebody thought of it, decided to put it online, decided that it would be, something that they're doing on a regular basis. So I've got to ask you, are you a builder?
No, that's a common question, man. So I'm not a builder. I'm not a contractor. What started all this was I'm just a homeowner. So I have construction, I did construction years ago. I used to frame houses. So I understand kind of how everything works together, how the trades work together. So I can kind of foresee, I guess I can look at things and go oh, that's going to be an issue later on down the road. So things like that. So I do have an understanding of how all that works. And when I was building my house, I thought I'm gonna murder this house. It's gonna be the best house that's ever existed because I'm gonna think through all these things. And just knowing what I know, I was quickly humbled to realize there's a whole lot of stuff that I was forgetting. So that's what started me kind of making a list for my friends that were going to be building in the next year or two. So I started building them a list of things to remember and mistakes that I made. And then, it's just slowly evolved to me making a video about it. And then I saw the feedback, people were really digging it. So then it just made me, go even further. So making more tips. And then now it's to a point where people are giving me ideas to where it's things that I identify, but then there's also things people are finding on their homes now. And I sell a checklist. So all the ideas that I'm getting from people, I'm dumping into the checklist. And then trying to churn that into like short form videos, like, short and sweet to the point.
Yeah, I mean, your reels are by definition very short and sweet and to the point, just by the fact that they are in the reels section of social media. But
Yeah.
that doesn't take away from, I never have I like watched one of your reels and been like, man, if that was 2 minutes longer, he could have like dove into that. Like you get right to the point, and they're very helpful tips and tricks. So backing up just a little bit, you said you were in the construction trade before you built your own house and kind of this all took off. What were you doing for a living?
So this was years ago. I was doing framing, like when I lived in Florida. So I was framing up houses in Florida, and then the economy took a dump, so I joined the army. So I was in the army for years, and then like when I got out of the army is when I had my house built. So yeah, there's a big gap in between like when I was framing houses and doing all this. So yeah, I just had a long stint in the army, and then I was doing contracting when I got out of the army. So that led to, and then this kind of popped up, and then now I'm doing this full time.
Gotcha. So thank you for your service, number one. Number two,
Thank
what
you.
did you do in the army?
So I was Intel. So I was doing Intel work in the army, and then pretty much like the same job when I got out of the army. You just do it on the contracting side of the house. So you still work for the army, you're just not wearing the uniform.
Okay, gotcha. Um, so you take that pre-army, if we're dividing your life into sections, right? If we take
Yeah,
that,
man.
we take that pre-army Dennis who is framing and is seeing issues arise, maybe figuring out solutions, and then you leave the army and you're like, okay, it's time to build a house. So is do you like kind of already have a checklist at that point, or are you just kind of like, you know what, I remember this time when I was framing and 20 things would come up later on, and it would have been easier to figure that out earlier, so let me just start implementing those on my own house?
That's such a good question. Like, so I was, I was doing framing, but I've always been obsessed with construction and just residential homes. It's just something that have always been into. So while I'm in the army and I'm bouncing around to all these different duty stations, I am creeping on every single new construction that I come across. Like,
Hmm.
if I'm just driving by my house and I see a new construction, I'm stopping and I'm going inside these and I'm just kind of like picking out things that I like and I don't like and identifying problems there. So it's almost like I'm like self-teaching myself as I go, just because I have a natural just curiosity with it. So while I'm going through these houses and I'm kind of planning out my next house, I'm making, yes, like I guess I'm not writing it down per se, I'm throwing down some ideas and some pictures, but for the most part, just in my head, thinking of all the different things that I want to see on my next house, and then just kind of just back playing from there.
Right. And for those listening, like, if you are within the appropriate business hours and there is somebody like on the site working, most sites don't mind you stopping by to say hello and walk around. It's obviously, if you show up at midnight trying to pick the dumpster for metal scraps, like that's going to be a concern. And if there's no one at the house and you break in, obviously that's breaking and entering. But for the most part, subcontractors, they love to explain what they're doing. Most people who do their trade love it enough to want to talk about it. So if you show up to a house like you may have and the HVAC guy is roughing in, the ducts, that usually it's not an issue. I mean, obviously there are some GCs who might say, get the hell off my site, or who are you, or whatever. But for the most part, if you're nice and polite and just want to, you go, hey, I live in the neighborhood, I saw it, want to check it out. And most people are happy to show you around. And it sounds like that was the case for you for the most part.
For sure, yeah, and yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of the contractors it's just like a common sense approach. You know what I mean? Like if they're in the middle of doing something, you know what I mean. You don't want to go up there and bother them. But yeah, I mean, it's just like any other conversation. You find a good opportunity to kind of just walk up there and poke around, and yeah, conversations just get started and they can give you some lessons learned and things to watch out for. And, builders are usually cool about it too. It's just, yeah, just a common sense approach. You know what I mean? You got to look at it from the builder's perspective. They don't want you there getting hurt and trying to sue them.
For
But
sure. Yeah.
if there's
Liability for sure.
yes, and they got, like some of the houses around here, when we were having our house built, every single one of our neighbors was in our house. I just know it. And it's like we weren't here, but it's almost like it's a common thing for everyone to kind of just poke around at the new house being built. So it's not uncommon for someone to go up there and look around. And like you said, don't take anything off the site. I mean, that's the biggest no-no you could
Yeah.
ever do. Even if it looks like trash, just leave it because it's not yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you said when we were having our house built, all of our neighbors obviously don't put any like personal information out on this podcast, but are you in like a cul-de-sac kind of situation with your neighborhood where your neighbors could, see the next one being built and just hop in? Or was it just, you found a piece of random land and you just happen to have some neighbors?
Yeah, it's more so we're like in a suburban-ish neighborhood, I guess. Like we're not nut to butt in the sense that like everyone's right next to each other, but so we
Right.
each have like a little bit of acreage. So during the summer when all the leaves are on the trees, you can't really see neighbors. But when you're driving down the road, you look up the driveway a little ways up, you can see a house being built. So I
Okay.
guess it's kind of like that meet in the middle. So honestly, it is kind of a little sketchy to walk up here because it isn't just right off the road.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, even I guess I would be a little concerned if people were walking in the house once it's to like a finished stage, but during like the framing stages, electrical, plumbing, things like that. I mean, to me, I think of it at least being my house, pretty fair game if anyone wants to come take a little gander.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Until I get a finished floor in there, I don't really mind. Once I have a finished floor down, then like only people I invite can go through a locked door wearing booties, because it's
Yeah,
like I just
that's
paid
a
to
good
have a nice
point.
floor down. But like you make a good point. When it's framing, like, go take a look, take a look at the bathroom, see if you like it. We framed the shower this way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
did you hire a person of third party nature to design your home or give you like a starter base of plans that then you kind of expanded on?
So we found our plans online. My wife kind of had her eye on this plan for years and years and years. So we were always kind of like tinkering just with the plan, and that's just us just printing it off. We didn't like officially buy the plans at first. We were just kind of like tinkering with the idea and layout of it. And then once we got further along, we pushed it to a local architect who redrew it. We had to buy like the originals, and then he tweaked it on his end. So we paid him. I think it was like a grand or something. It was actually fairly cheap because I know some people are paying upwards of 5 grand to have that done. And
Yeah,
then
that's
and then
pretty
we kind of just
reasonable.
went, yeah, right, like 1,000. And at the time I thought it was expensive, but looking at back on it now, it's pretty
And
good.
he did like the full scope of plans, what we might call in the industry shop drawings, like the foundation supports, the lighting plan, the electrical plan, the framing plan, the door schedule. Like he supplied you with a full, ready to be submitted for a permit drawing package.
Yeah, and that was also with the builder. So like it was in conjunction with the builder. So that's like the builder's guy. So we went through
Okay.
the builder. He pointed us in that direction. We kind of wheeled and dealed with that dude, paid him out of pocket ourselves, but we also knew that they had a good relationship. So like that connection was already made. So any future changes that the builder needed, he knew that he could contact him. So I really liked having that, I guess, relationship that everyone was kind of on board together.
So you found a builder first.
Yeah, I found a builder first, but I had the plan kind of like laid out. I went to the builder. I'm like, hey, dude, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And then he gave us some rough idea. I knew that I wasn't gonna have to like sell a kidney to make it happen. So like we knew that we were golden in that sense. And then we kind of moved forward from there to where we refined the price with the builder once we sent it over to the plans guy, made some additional changes. And then once we got the finalized price, then we were able to move forward.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so that's not, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, order of operations, but every plan is so different. Some people they find an architect first. Some people find a designer first who knows nothing about architecture. Some people are like, oh, well, I know an electrician. Let's start there. What's the panel cost? So
Oh, that's a
I
good
guess kind
point.
of your networking, how did you meet that builder?
So that's funny that you say that, because yeah, it was very different how I approached it. Like, I was very aggressive because I got a bunch of no's on what I was trying to do. So I went hard trying to find a builder that was willing to like work with us. And our financing was a little bit weird too, was I wanted to use a VA loan, which was kind of not accepted by a lot of people. They weren't really wanting to work with that for a new construction. So yeah, when I was going to try to find a builder, I just kind of just interviewed a bunch in the area, kind of, and I knew that the financing was going to be the big hurdle. So that was the first question I brought up with them, and as soon as I got a no from them, I was just moving on down the line.
What
So
were the
yeah,
other hurdles?
the biggest hurdle was financing, and then the other hurdle was just I wanted to be able to find a builder to where I could get a little hands on in the job. Like, I didn't want them to
Mhm.
tell me, you don't go, there's nothing that you can do there. I wanted to run some of like the low voltage wiring. There's some things that I just have always wanted to do on my house. I wanted to do, like, if there was some framing stuff I wanted to add, I wanted the freedom there. So yeah, that was just some of the things that I brought up.
So did you so finding that builder, that's difficult, I can tell you, as the builder of the two of us. That is really an insurance negative. That's really like not okay on my license. There's so many things. Like, I have done that, just so we're clear. Like, I've had, not necessarily framing, but I have had clients be like, I just don't have the money to pay for the paint, so bring it to, trim it out and leave it ready for primer, like caulk everything and then leave. And, I'll do it myself. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But like,
Yeah.
so I don't love doing it, but you got to do what the client does. It's like that, or don't do the job. Um, so that
And I
I could
see that as
see that.
being crazy hard for a builder. Like, I can see, knowing what I know now, that it's crazy to try to find a builder like that, because there is so many fat question marks and liability in that sense. And when I approached it, I did approach it in the sense that, like, it sounds different the way that I'm explaining it to you, but when I was talking to him, it was more of like, I didn't say I need to be in there and I need to frame this and I need to do that. It was like, hey man, is it cool if I go on there and do some of the minor things here and there? And then he kind of knew my background, and like, that I wasn't that I kind of knew what I was doing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so I guess it was unofficially like we gave each other a head nod that it was going to be cool, I guess, is how we approached it.
Yeah, I went through almost the exact same thing. Jeremy Stallings, who's been on the podcast twice, he hired me to build his house, and he just did the electrical himself. He was like, I'm an electrical engineer. I can do this.
Oh hell
You know,
yeah.
I don't have he's like, I don't have a license to be a higher electrician, but I can wire it. And I was like, cool. You're gonna pay me as a GC. We're gonna get a permit as a homeowner, and you can legally do all your electric, and we're gonna get it inspected just the same. And
Yep.
exactly everything that happened. And his house is freaking awesome. And I was like, I don't really care who does the electric. I just need to know that it's permitted, it's inspected correctly. And if we're using my electrician, he's got to get paid. But he saved,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
$7,000 of labor, by doing it all himself. And of course, he did say he almost lost his mind sitting on a bucket wiring outlets, like,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
3 weeks straight after work. But he saved that money. So
I know a lot of the
there's
builders have a problem with, like, some people come and say, "Oh, my uncle said he can do this and he can do that," and it ends up being a that's where it can get a little tricky. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's I am 100% with the builder on that. Like, I understand the no's, you know what I mean? Because it's like that holds up progress. The guy doesn't show up, you can't pass inspection. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to be considered there for sure.
Yeah, if you're a listener and you're like, oh, I could totally, frame the bathroom, but not the rest of the house, or whatever the thing might be, you really
Yeah.
do have to, when a builder says no, before you get mad and question it, you really have to, in your head, question why he might be saying no. Like, it might be really, really stupid for them to stop doing something for you to do 2 to 3% of something, just because like you have the know-how. And then there's, of course, as we mentioned, liability, insurance, probably 2 or 3 things I'm not mentioning. Also, just like how many people can work on the site at the same time, parking for so many subcontractors. I mean, there's a laundry list of things where just like, you know what? You needed a builder for the house for a reason. Maybe just let him do, his part.
For sure. Like, so the things that I did, just to clarify, it was so minimal. It's like I wanted to run the low voltage wiring because I wanted to put Smurf tubing in the walls to some of those locations so I could, which if you don't know, Smurf tubing is just like essentially just conduit inside the wall. So I could change out that wiring if I wanted to at a later date. I knew that would be super costly to have somebody come in and do, because it's not common to run that Smurf tubing like that. So
Yeah.
I wanted to run the Smurf tubing behind the walls, and it's super non-invasive. I knew I'd get in there after the builder or the plumbers and electricians, so it wouldn't be an issue. Another one was framing blocking, where and the builder knew, like, okay, if you put blocking that's going to be in the way of insulation, guess what he's going to do? He's just going to knock it out of the way, and that's just going to be the end of the story. And then the gutter drains, I did those myself, and I knew the guy who was doing the land clearing, so I was able to kind of work with him and do that on the side. And that was like the extent of kind of what I was doing. So there wasn't any major like, I'm going to do the plumbing or I'm going to do like massive framing. Like if they already have a framer, there's no need for someone to come in there and do anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's all I did.
Those are really great examples of stuff that as a listening homeowner, you absolutely should be able to do it. If you can have the intelligence and patience to wait for, HVAC, plumbing, and electric to all be roughed in and pass, then going in, running a Smurf tube for a wire hide for your TV, for your low voltage, for your cameras, whatever, that, it's going to cost you 2 hours, some screws, and the materials, versus an electrician's going to charge you all of that and $1,000. And it's like, okay, well, you don't have to pay a skilled electrician to do that. It's just not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Blocking is even simpler. I mean, you don't even need a tape measure. You need scraps and pencil. You scribe it, you chop it, you nail or screw it, and then your curtains will never fall down, or your shower rod, or your anything you're using a drywall anchor for, the bath hooks, especially, big towels, big robes, stuff like that. So, for me, as someone who's hiring a framer, when my framer says, to frame this house is 15 grand, it does not cost me extra to have him put 15 blocks where I point, because he's getting 15 grand to frame an entire house, and there's a dumpster full of scraps. And I go, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, one up there, one up there. He goes, okay. And it takes him 3 seconds. He's got everything set up, blah, 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 blah. Now, obviously, if the framer's done and has been paid in full and the job is good and he's left to the next thing, and then you need to get him back on a site.
That's a good point.
This is more for the listener than for you. That he's got to charge you. He's got to charge you to gas to get there, to set up the compressor.
Absolutely.
Possibly go buy a 2x8 that you want chopped into 14-inch sections for blocking. So timing is a big thing. So, in your situation where you probably had dozens of scrap block lying around, and the ability to go chop and get some screws and just, the framer, I doubt he cared. You're not in his way. And like you said, if you're not blocking insulation, which if you're building a house and want to get this involved, you should know where the insulation is going to go and where it's not going to go. Sure. Were you using spray foam or the battens?
We had bat.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't use any spray foam. I wish I would have done spray foam up in the attic, but it was we were just cutting it close on budget. But now I know all 18,000 different things I do different. I feel like everyone feels the same after they build a house.
Yeah. So you didn't follow your own checklist? No, I'm just kidding.
That's what makes a checklist so good, all those lessons learned.
So what are some top ones that you could think of that are like, man, if I could build my house again, I would change these three things?
It's hard to do like a top three. If for me personally, there's things like drainage. I just wish I would have done more like French drains, where I'm seeing some drainage issues now. That's a big one where it's just gonna kill me to do later on. It would have been so much easier then. Under running conduit under the concrete, so I can have access to like pulling wires or drainage underneath that concrete if I ever needed to later. That's a big one. Those stand out the most. It's those things that you can't really change later. Interior insulation, or like in the bedroom, that would have been super nice to do. I probably would have done some rock wool of that like sound damping insulation in there. I think that would have been super helpful with like a solid core door.
You mean for the interior walls, just for noise?
Yeah, just to kind of
Okay.
bring down that noise level, because yeah, there's just things like that, like the kids are up a little bit late. I'm trying to get to sleep because I'm going to get up early, and it's like if I would have done that, I don't think it would have been much of an issue.
Yeah, and as you said, it's not necessarily hard. It's just really expensive to do some of that stuff later, because it's just like, you got to replace all that sheetrock that you got to rip down to get into the wall cavities and paint and trim, and it just becomes, you start stacking these dollars, and it's like you said, it would have been real easy to do, when it was open, and you had the access. But of course, like, you know, there's nobody who wouldn't want every room to be perfectly soundproofed, but also, budget's a real thing,
Oh yeah.
like it's unfortunately for the majority of people, because I don't have any movie stars listening currently, but hopefully we're going to get more listeners.
There's a few out there for
There's a
sure.
few out there, hopefully. um but most of us, uh we live in the real world with like real world budgets. So we spray foam our houses, but we are doing we're doing we're buying a house where we gut it, and the entire house then needs insulation, and the entire house needs an HVAC system.
Mm,
So it's actually not more money because we spend two extra grand on spray foam, we save 2 grand on the HVAC system. So
yeah,
like in our case, it's the same money. So we could just pay, we could spend less money on insulation, and we could spend more money on the HVAC system. So it's the
that's a
same
good
money
point.
in
Yeah.
that case, because the air conditioning unit is significantly cheaper and smaller when you're spray foaming not only the walls, but the roof deck and the crawl space, basically just making it, no air movement that's not controllable. And
Man,
that,
I like that. That's a really good point.
yeah, well, so that then makes my tenants very happy. Their electric heating bills are not as atrocious. Most of our projects are heat pump, one box. And then we are also, we rent everything out, but as we build from day one thinking of resale.
Mm,
So we have our houses all rented, but when they go to be resold, it's still, spray foam didn't deteriorate after 10 years. The
yeah,
HVAC
yeah.
system used, and the unit might need to be replaced, but that spray foam is still going to be, at the same efficiency level. Whereas, that blown in insulation that might be in the attic sitting on the ceiling, that's going to compress
Oh yeah.
and need to be added. And so there's pluses and minuses, to every side you want to go to. So how long is your checklist nowadays?
Dude, I'm going through it right now, I'm actually reorganizing everything as it sits. Like all the information is the same, it stays the same. There's a few more things I'll be adding, but I'm kind of reorganizing it in a way. Um that just, I don't know, feels like it makes more sense as time's gone on. I've gotten more recommendations, so I'm kind of moving around, and I could pull it up real quick. I mean, it's over 20 pages long.
Wow.
Um,
And
yeah, so
it's
it's
full, and
growing.
it's encompassing from, site work to trim. It's not just finishing touches.
So right now it's kind of organized into like phases of construction where as each phase of construction is going on, there's some things that you could watch out for as a homeowner and consider, make sure everything is, you know, if it doesn't look right, maybe you can bring it up to the builder and ask them. And then it's also broken into like selections, because that's a big part of it is just knowing what's available. Like you were saying with the with with the insulation, it's like if you don't know that that's available or that exists, then later on you're kicking yourself in the butt because you're like, oh man, I wish I would have known that that was there. So a lot of it is selections in the checklist as well. So people just know, like, is that something I want to think about, or that doesn't apply to me, and they can just move it on down the line.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's it's a combo. It's not just a things to like, it's not just tweaks to make your house better. It's also like, hey, what kind of stuff do you want to look at when you look at the ceiling porch? The porch of this is like, do you want it to be wood? Do you want it to be vinyl? Do you want it to be painted? Do
Yes.
you want Trek or cement or whatever? Like it's as it's it's the tricks, but it's also just the checklist of building a home as well.
Yeah, like even simple things of what color do you want the walls? You know what I mean? Just thinking about those things early really help move things along, because I caught myself quite a few times where I'm making last minute decisions where I'm like, oh man, I really wish I could take some time to kind of research this, but things are moving and the guy's going to be out there tomorrow. Which one do you want? You know, and it's like, man, I sure would like to drop this question in a forum somewhere and see kind of what other people have to say, which I have a Facebook group for that. If anyone's interested, it's got like 40,000 members in there. It's free to join. So you can bounce your ideas off of there. But yeah, that's the idea, is just kind of like help people pre-plan exactly what they want their house to like be. And then they can kind of relay that vision to their builder. Because I was saying this the other day is, dude, the being able to build a house is actually, and it's insane. There's so much that goes into it. It's
Oh
amazing
yeah.
that it gets accomplished. You know what I mean? All the little small details, like the job that a builder has is mind-boggling. You know what I mean? It's like any builder I ever talked to, they're just on the phone constantly. I don't even know how they sleep, you know? So it's the more information you can provide to them and kind of help streamline the process, everybody wins in the end, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And having, you know, it written on a checklist and then confirmed via text and confirmed on the phone, and there's an email and just like something to go back on. Like communication is so key. But I mean, you touched on it in a very, as the non-builder talking to the builder. I mean, you're right. It's time consuming, it's stressful. The bad stories only get talked about, the good stories
Mm.
never get spoken about. You never overhear a dinner conversation like, oh, we just finished the bathroom renovation and it was on time, on budget, and it was great. You've never heard that at a
So
dinner.
true, yeah.
It's always like, oh, this effing dude, he took forever and he broke this and he tracked mud and blah 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 blah, and I'd never hire him again. And it's like, is that really true, or were you just frustrated because you only have one bathroom and the tile took an extra week because you special ordered it? Like,
Yeah, you're
there's
not getting the whole story.
exactly, no one's getting the whole story. One of my favorite sayings that I got from my grandma was, you're not under the mattress. Which means when like a couple's fighting, there's the story she tells her friends, the story he tells his friends, and then there's the story they tell their therapist, and then there's the truth. And unless you're under the mattress to hear it in real time, there's just like no way to actually know what's true.
It's yeah. Dude, so you mentioned like having it written down. I don't mention that enough, to where it's like having things on paper really do help, and not in a bad way to be like, oh yeah, the builder's gonna try to screw you over. But there's just been a lot of instances where it's like you go back and you're like, oh, I'm pretty sure that I said that we need this, but then you find out that like you didn't say that. You said something different, or the email never went through. So it is really good to just like have all that stuff in writing. I know some people, they make a specific email account just for the build. So everything that they discuss or talk about and receipts, they're all in that one email account.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just the text thread. In North Carolina, texts are contracts. Like it's a verbal agreement as if it was a contract, like by law. So if I tell
Oh,
you
hell
the
yeah.
roof is 10 grand via text, that and then I try to screw you, you have that text that holds up in a court of law even. So for me, I'm just like, you know, I like, phone calls are good because quick conversation, but like rehashing a phone call on a text, like, hey, just, we just had a 10-minute phone call where we agreed it will be this color, this
Mm,
amount, boom, 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 and just kind of backtrack it all in a text or an email. That's something I got from my
yeah, hit
pops
the
who runs his
highlights.
own company, and he's just like, it's invaluable. Just in case you screw up or you didn't, and your ass is covered. Like, hey, I did what you said.
Yeah.
You didn't actually write in the text, paint it blue or whatever it may be. Um, so real quick for listeners, where can they get your content, your information? What's your Facebook group called? How do they buy your checklist?
So I got you can go to builderbrigade.com and I'll just have everything kind of like right in there where you can access everything. Builderbrigade.com/social. I try to put all the links in there. If you're seeing anything on social, my Amazon storefront or whatever they give you, I try to put any products that I recommend in there. I sell that checklist, which you can find that at builderbrigade.com, and then that Facebook group. Jump in there and you can, man, that is just the coolest thing ever, that Facebook group. People are just asking questions like, what do you think about this design and that design? And they got builders and contractors in there and a bunch of homeowners who have been through the process, some more than once, more than twice. So yeah, I'm a big fan of crowdsourcing things like that, because I really truly feel like sometimes just someone's opinion isn't necessarily the answer. It's good to have, like, bounce your ideas off a bunch of people. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's my
and
thought.
and also, when you're doing that, I agree that it's a massive resource, but I also like to throw in, with a grain of sand, because if especially in the world of design, there is rarely a correct answer in design. Design is what do you
Yes.
want? Your color, your shape. Do you like crown molding? Whatever it may be. Function is a very different conversation. If you want to have a conversation about what size wire goes to what size outlet and what size breaker for your electric car to charge, there are very clear answers. There are 2, 3 options, and we make a decision. If you want to have a conversation about what height you should hang your paintings. Well, I'm 6'5". I'm a giant. We might not agree, or what color to paint your walls. I like orange. A lot of people don't. Like, so I just like, I love that resource. I use not necessarily your group, but I will be joining it between you and me. But all kinds of those groups. But you do have to weigh, just for listeners, you do have to weigh what you're asking with you got to weigh it appropriately. If you need to know
Yeah.
a specific answer, that's one thing. If you want opinions on something, you just need to know that they are in fact opinions, and opinions are not necessarily a black and white right or wrong answer. So that's my 2 cents on that, because I get a lot of clients who are like, well, what would you think would be a good tile choice? I'm like, no,
Dude.
no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. I'll give you a labor price tile. You go to best tile, pick a
Yeah.
tile. I don't want anything to do with it. I can tell you should put a niche. That's as far as I will go. So,
Yes.
and that's, as somebody listening who might think about be designing their own house, when a builder says this looks good, it probably looks good to him and what he might
Yeah.
want. So you've got to weigh that.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is to just, like, if it's something that you really want, who cares what anybody thinks about it? Do what you want. And like, I like the group because it kind of helps people feel better about bringing things up to their builder. Like, hey, does this look wrong? And then if everyone in the comments is like, dude, that is so wrong, you need to have that fixed, then you feel more comfortable bringing it up to your builder. Where, some people, they're busy, so you don't want to be asking them all these random questions. Just dump it in the group, kind of get like, see if you're crazy or not, and then maybe that'll give you a green light to bother them with it.
I think that's fantastic advice, man. This was so awesome. I really want to thank you for making the time, man. I really appreciate it. Everybody go check out the Builder Brigade on the internet, on his website. And Dennis, it was great talking to you, man.
Yes, man, you too. Thank you so much for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks again.
All right, see you.